20. Every wealthy trader has an edge they can explain to their mothers. Now, the only person who may not have this is somebody who's doing an algorithm, who's a PhD, who has figured out some computerized way to have their edge. For most people, if you can't explain how you make money in the market in between an elevator ride from the first to the third floor, you don't have an edge. If you can't explain it to somebody who doesn't trade, you probably don't have an edge.
Bruce Lee has quotes out there about, simplify. It's not what you add, it's what you take away. That's where I think all traders need to try to get to. And it's not by doing more, it's by doing less, and what you do less of, do better. And in the trading world, do it bigger. Find something where you can get to size on it, especially if you're a one-man business.
Our job is to find an edge in markets. Barry's analysis of all you need is one pattern. That's all. You just need one pattern to be successful. But they've got a process and they stick to that over and over and over and over again. And your process your trading edge does not have to be complicated at all. Your trading edge does not have to be complicated at all.
The world economies are all tied in together. And here's the thing is that you don't need to know that. You do not need to know that if the yen goes higher, stocks might go lower. All you have to do is have a handful of good setups. And the traders that I've learned, that have mentored me and have been doing this for 30 plus years, they all have I've got 3 setups and I watch 4 markets and that's it. They don't care what's going on. They don't watch the news. They're not looking for the latest tips. They just have their niche and they kind of, grind it out and make some money. And I'm a big believer in that. I actually think the less information you have, the better you'll do, because otherwise you just get distracted.
I often find that beginner traders think of traders out there as people who have a very sophisticated method and many, many variables to it. But I find that successful traders have narrowed it down to a very small number of variables. And this is basically what they go with. I think that beginner traders, as opposed to very experienced and successful traders, they try to have many charts, many screens, many platforms, and they think that will all lead to success. But the reality is the successful traders that I saw and have met over my life, they use very simple methods, and they actually very proud of it. They don't say that they use sophisticated methods. They say we use simple things. It works for us. Whether they use a long-term approach or a short-term approach, it still has to be simple. Now, I want to emphasize one thing as well. When I say simple, sometimes it took them years to get to that simple. Meaning that, maybe they started off with a lot of variables and a lot of indicators and a lot of other things that basically thought would help them. But at the same time, over time, they kind of, saw that certain things really just mislead them or they don't help them. So they simply narrowed it down.
What happened, to kind of bring the story around, I started with simplicity, thinking it looked easy. Then added all this stuff, realizing, okay, it's not as easy as I thought. And now I've come back to very, very simple things. And to quote Bruce Lee, one of my childhood heroes, he said, before you start studying Kung Fu, you think a kick is just a kick and a punch is just a punch. Then when you start going to Kung Fu and study it, Kung Fu classes, and the master shows you all this cool stuff, then you realize, oh, a punch is not just a punch and a kick is not just a kick. Then years later, when you master Kung Fu, you realize, oh, a punch is just a punch and a kick is just a kick. But the point is, you got to go through the process. You end up kind of at the same place as far as simplicity goes, but you learn so much by going through the complexity. There's several different trade setups and strategies that I use. So I'll give you a few of them. I mean, there's nothing really fancy schmancy. I'm not using any ancient Phoenician numerology or anything like that. this is basic stuff, like I say, when I went to Chicago, I'd already been trading for a while, and I thought it was all that because I was making money, and my trading method was very sophisticated is the term I would have used then. The term I would use now is overly complicated. And so I went to Chicago because I hired a floor trader there to work with me. I just dumped 5 figures into his living room and said, teach me. And so he did, and I got an apartment out there. But what was very interesting was that his trading method and those of his friends, they were just so darn simple. I mean, they were ridiculously simple. I went with the intention of showing him, oh, here's my, sophisticated method. Aren't you impressed? I never showed it to him because after seeing what he was doing, and of course he was making a lot more money than I was, he was making millions, I was embarrassed with what I was doing. So I'm like, okay, time to regroup here.
I thought trading's difficult. You need a complicated solution. So I thought I'll start off with a few basic rules, and I'm just going to add lots and lots of things to it to make it really complicated and complex and everything. And all of a sudden, these simple rules were actually getting results. And I thought, do I need to go any further? Do I need to add complexity to this? Maybe I don't. So that was another learning point, that simple rules actually do work. And whenever I sign my book now, and I sold some books last week, whenever I sign my book now, front cover, I write, keep it simple. Because we have a very natural tendency to complicate things. And yet in trading, I think simple works very well.
I think some people are a little more cut out for trading than others. I think that sometimes extremely cerebral, highly intellectual, they view themselves as smarter than everybody else. They're brilliant. They sometimes have a hard time with trading because they just know too much. And some of the best traders, if you look at some of the floor traders, the people that have come off the streets that really didn't know a whole lot about investing at all, certainly don't have the MBA or anything, but they're successful traders because they find something that works and they stick to it, and they don't let the markets beat them up because they don't really have that mental side of them that wants to analyze and theoretically understand everything out there. They just want to make some money and go home, so that's what they do.
And that's when a light bulb went off that, all these guys were like late 20s, early 30s. Every single one of them was a 7-figure trader. And every single one of them had one particular trade that they zeroed in on, and they just got really good at that. And that's all they did. So my feeling, but prior to that, was I have to learn a lot. I have to read a gazillion books. I have to truly understand everything about the market that you can possibly learn. And from this, I'm going to become good. And then here I am sitting in a row of guys who are, at the time, about my age, a little bit younger, who made a lot of money, who weren't like that. In fact, they had dumbed themselves down to the point where they just did one single trade, and they just did it over and over, and they made a lot of money. And that's when a light bulb went on for me.
When I came in knowing that my number one goal was to manage risk, keep a very small, instinctual set of trading rules, I was able to free up all of the emotion and go after the market.
One of the things you said which really struck me was that you don't look at a chart for more than a split second. I'd love it if you could share your reasoning for this with the listeners.
Yeah, this is another hard lesson I learned. So the good setups, they are right there in front of your face. And if you're looking at a chart for more than a split second, it means that you're trying to force something onto that. I mean, literally the best setups, in half a second, you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Everything's coming together. If it's not like that, then you're going to keep staring at it, and you're going to you're going to try to force something into that that's not actually there. It's not a good setup. The best setups, you can identify them, just like that. And if you can't, move on to the next chart. So the answer to that is, like, if you're looking at a chart and if in like a split second you don't see anything, you don't have anything. So it's just the easiest way to do that.
Okay. And do you think that you can identify setups that quickly because you have, 20 plus years of market experience and years looking at charts? Or is that something you would say that newer traders should also try to apply to their own trading?
No, I think it's a little combination of both. What happens is, after doing this for 20 plus years, you start learning the setups that give you the best results. So, to be fair, it's like, oh, okay, gosh, anytime that happens, I'm definitely going to, take a position. As a newer trader, what happens is I call it, there's the natural inclination to search for that holy grail and continue tweaking a chart, adding more indicators, all that kind of fun stuff. What the moral of the story is, have a setup that you like, keep it simple. And I've found that if you have a setup that you can't explain to a 12-year-old, it's too complicated. So, keep it simple.
Whenever you study the great traders out there, yes, there's a few exceptions to everything, but the majority of the great traders keep things so simple, it's almost like, what? How are they keeping it so simple? So that's the secret. The secret is to keep things as simple as possible. You want to eliminate stuff, not add things. This shiny object syndrome, listen, we've all been there, guys. We've all been there, been in our platform, we're trading away. Oh, look, copper's moving. Oh, look, so-and-so's moving. And we start to get distracted by that. Before we know it, missing opportunities there, we're losing money there. No. End of it. If you're doing that, end it now. If you look at some of the millionaire traders, guys, the multi-millionaire traders, the guys who are doing, 10 million plus a year, or even 1 million plus a year, or even a successful trader, they're using simple patterns. They're not clouding up their charts or clogging up their charts with multiple indicators. That is the common theme I see with traders who just spin the wheels. There's traders out there who are very experienced and can trade multiple markets because they know exactly what they're looking for, but don't make the mistake in thinking they're making it complicated. They've got a time-tested pattern, they're patient, they're disciplined, they know their strengths, and the key thing is they've got laser focus. They're not getting distracted by shiny objects.
Determine your risk. It either works or it doesn't, and go to the next trade. Determine your risk. It works or it doesn't, go to the next trade. That's all it is. That's the whole game.